Of course, nobody wants breast cancer, and there's a lot of fear surrounding this dreaded diagnosis.
Or any other cancer for that matter,
Yeah.
or any serious disease.
But when you take into account the body, mind, emotion, spirit connection, it's not all bad. And for many, it's actually a time for emotional and spiritual growth and a time to learn who your real friends are and who you really are. And a study on positive personal growth following a breast cancer diagnosis shows that there can be some unexpected benefits. And since we know the downsides already, what are some of the positive effects of getting a diagnosis of cancer?
Yeah, well, that's really a good question. I think in the immediate time that people first learn about having breast cancer, that you can't learn much of anything because you're in a panic and you just want to get rid of this disease at all costs. But as you have it for a longer and longer period of time, you start to see some of the things that happen. It's almost like an awakening. And things happen such as your relationships will improve.
And what's important in life, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you get more personal strength. You're closer to the role of spirit and healing. There are changes in your priorities. Lots of opportunity here that doesn't seem like it's ever going to happen when you first get the disease, because what happens is you panic and you think that you're going to die from this for sure. And maybe you will, but you're still going to learn things.
Well, one of the things that I think it's so important is that social support, and also to have your doctor and your other healthcare providers really listen to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps with the fear.
Well, I think a good doctor does a lot of listening to somebody who has any kind of cancer, because whenever your life is threatened, it takes you close to what the meaning of what life is about. When we are threatened, there's a natural inclination to not be thinking about our bank accounts or the number of jewels we have or the real estate portfolio we have. We're more interested in making things right with the people we care about. So it's almost like you have an opportunity to fix those relationships, because what have you got to lose at this point? And you may be on the way out.
Well, it also teaches you some coping strategies,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really important. But I think that this is good for people to know who are friends of someone that's had this diagnosis. And we almost all know somebody that's had a diagnosis of cancer, if not breast cancer.
Absolutely.
And so it's good to know how important our role is with them. To
lots
to
of love and support and
them
listening and caring. Yeah, you don't get that a lot of the time. And today our doctors are not so much oriented to having time to spend doing things like this. And it's why the cancer support groups are so important, and why hospice at the end of life is such an important contribution to how we face these things.
And I thought also it was interesting to show that it seems to promote a positive attitude that's unrelated to whether a person's optimistic in general or not.
Yeah, well, there was this article that was published in a journal called Psycho-Oncology, and they examined the change in post-traumatic stress and the growth that goes with it over 2 years in 653 women. And what they found is that all the things you were talking about were improved, and it became something of an opportunity for personal growth.
Well, speaking of personal growth, can you tell the story of your patient, Julie? I think that's a really good story to share.
Yeah, this was a young woman who had just turned 40, and she came to me to start with a lot of pain because she had breast cancer that was metastatic, and she'd been treated for a number of years by the best oncologists in town. And she had heard that we had the infrared light therapy and wondered if we might be able to try that instead of the morphine that was being prescribed to manage her pain, because it made her not function too well. And sure enough, to everybody's surprise, it took about 3 minutes of light, just waving it over the areas where she was having trouble, and the pain would disappear. It would stay away for weeks to months. And what she learned from this experience, not just of the infrared light, but of having cancer for a prolonged period of time, because she had 2 little kids, 2 little girls, and a husband that was very nourishing. And
plus all the friends she had because of that party. Tell about the party.
yeah, it was a beautiful party. She had a fundraiser because she couldn't afford.
Well, her family had it for her. She didn't.
She helped to organize it for sure. But it was something that everybody wanted to do so she could get what she wanted. And I remember being there thinking, what can I do? And I thought, well, okay, I'll just accept assignment and accept whatever your insurance pays. And if they don't pay, I'll give you the service anyway. And there was such a camaraderie there of all her friends and family that made it something we're all going through together. So
it really was a beautiful idea.
Right. And she went on and lived a couple more years before she finally succumbed to cancer. It was a very moving experience, and she had found her peace. And even though she had two little kids, and I don't know how you ever really resolve that you're going to leave them just to a husband who's working and having to support them.
Well, too, I've also observed the care of other patients in the Health Medicine Center, for example, that have chosen to use integrative approaches to their cancer. And whether they survived or didn't survive, it was like this beautiful experience. They would try like energy healing, and so they would just take in all the love and the nurturing that goes with that. And then they would do, like homeopathy, and they would do acupuncture, and
they did everything that was conceivably possible that appealed to them. But the real beauty of what happened is they moved from information exchange, meaning learning about things, to connection. And that's what you need a lot of the time to go beyond what curing does. Curing fixes symptoms, but healing is a much deeper thing.
And they feel so loved.
Yeah, and even if you're going to die, you can heal. And so many of those people do. It's why we do what we call a healing circle, where we get together with 4, 5, or 6 practitioners of different disciplines. We have the patient write an autobiography of their physical, emotional, and spiritual life from birth to the present time. We give that to each of the practitioners who we think are going to be able to be helpful. And we spend 2 hours listening and caring and trying to support and love without giving any ultimatums of what to do, but making sure that they're getting the treatment that they need if it's at all possible. And we do this for free, which is another piece of why this is such a wonderful experience, because you're giving of yourself, you're giving your time.
Well, and it makes the person feel supported and loved, and there's a benefit to that.
Right. Well, that's why
healing benefit.
That's why these people do so much better, according to this study that was published. So when we look at a diagnosis, even if it's the worst of all time, there's still something to be gained from it. And I, in my own mind, and I know Vicki feels this way too, is there's a reason for everything that happens, even though it seems awful at the time that it may be happening. But after a little time goes by and we think about it, if we look at the little things that we learn and look at the values in life that are most important, it takes us to another place in our life where we gain something that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Well, what about our friends Steve and Barb? They both have cancer. They both have a different type of cancer. And he never, ever says anything negative about it. He keeps talking about all of his blessings and all of his friends. And he just talks.
And he learned so many things, and she did too. And they've been both fighting or living with cancer for a long time. So there's more to an illness than the suffering and the disability and the emotional challenge. There's the opportunity for walking a different spiritual path where there's more meaning. And if you do that, chances are you're going to look at the positive side of what happens and gain from it rather than just suffer.